After the college entrance exams, my son, Ethan, was accepted into a prestigious university. He immediately dashed off to his father's house to share the good news. Meanwhile, I was bedridden with a severe illness, with no one to care for me. On my deathbed, I called him and said, "I'm dying." "It's none of my business if you die," he replied coldly. "You made me suffer through 3 miserable years. You deserve to die." It wasn't until the day of my funeral that the community committee managed to contact Ethan. They told him, "Do you still want to go to college? If you don't come, I'll report your situation to your school." Only then, reluctantly, did he come to collect my ashes. A neighbor, infuriated by his attitude, pointed at him and scolded, "Your mother spent 3 years tirelessly working a stall to support your studies, and this is how you repay her? You're an ungrateful brat." Ethan, however, looked unconvinced. "My dad runs a big business. My stepmom's a corporate executive, and my grandma dotes on me. Why should I care about her? If she worked herself to death, that's on her." My soul twisted in anger, hovering above, as I shouted at him, "You heartless brat! Are you blind and ungrateful? If they truly loved you, would they have schemed to take custody of you from me?" But Ethan ignored me completely. He clutched the urn impatiently and walked away. Even when I was alive, he never listened to me. I watched helplessly as he exited the neighborhood, glanced around, and then tossed my urn into a trash can like it was a cursed, filthy object. Dusting off his hands, he sneered, "Finally, no one can control me anymore." Taking out his phone, he eagerly started gaming, exclaiming, "All right, let's team up." That moment, I felt a sorrow deeper than death itself. I couldn't even cry. What was I still hoping for? I watched as he played game after game, all the way until night fell. Then, for a moment, his face turned pale, and his brows furrowed. I thought he had finally realized that he no longer had a mother. But instead, he muttered irritably, "Why hasn't Grandma called yet? I'm starving." That was the final blow. My love as a mother drained away completely. I began to detach myself from the heartbreak. Deep down, I had known for a long time that Ethan resented me. When he was in 10th grade, he once begged me to buy an in-game item for $60. I refused. He flew into a rage, shoving and hitting me. "It's all your fault. If I lived with Dad, I could buy whatever I wanted. You're broke. So why even try to parent me?" He shoved me so hard that I hit the corner of the table and started bleeding. Without looking back, he stormed off. I spent the entire night searching for him, only for him to return the next day, smugly showing off the 10 in-game items his father had bought for him, along with new clothes and shoes. Earlier still, after failing to score high enough to get into a top high school, I suggested he repeat a year. "I'd rather die than repeat a grade. It's too humiliating," he yelled, storming off to his father. His dad, Ryan, agreed immediately and sent him to a poorly rated school instead. Feeling triumphant, Ethan came back to gloat, saying, "Only Dad knows how to solve my problems." What he never considered was that without me painstakingly supervising his studies for 3 years, he wouldn't have even come close to passing the university admissions threshold, let alone getting into a prestigious school. But no matter how much I gave, it could never compare to the occasional gifts and indulgences from his father's family. Ethan always believed I was the obstacle preventing him from living a wealthy and comfortable life. I felt a bitter, unworthy anger. My sacrifices had been discarded like trash. My short life had been wasted on a son who despised me. I thought I'd carry this resentment into my next life. But then, suddenly, I heard Ethan shouting furiously, "Don't drag me into this. You loser." I moved my stiff limbs, and sharp ceramic shards pierced my foot. Staring at the acne-covered face of my teenage son, I froze. Slowly, I realized I had been reborn. This was the day of his high school entrance exams. The day I discovered Ryan had been cheating on me and resolved to divorce him. Fate had given me a second chance. Warmth spread through my hands, and my heart began pounding fiercely, struggling to suppress my emotions. I said calmly, "I don't have a job or an income. The court won't grant me custody of you." Ryan stared at me in shock. "Jessica, what do you mean by that? You found a job that pays $10,000 a month, didn't you?" Ethan shouted as he stormed up to me, his face twisted in defiance. I let out a cold laugh, remembering my past life. Back then, I'd overheard gossip among my coworkers about the company's HR manager, Donna, and her ruthless schemes. "Donna's so cunning," someone had said. "She helped the ex-wife find a job and then used it to secure custody for her husband. Two birds with one stone, kicking the troublesome ex out so she could marry him cleanly and quietly. Genius." Only then did I realize Donna, the company's HR manager, had set me up. She manipulated me into a job I wasn't qualified for, knowing I'd eventually be let go. For the sake of survival, I swallowed my pride and humiliation without confronting her. But just days later, Donna discarded me like trash, claiming my skills didn't match the position. People who didn't know the truth assumed I was some nepotism hire and cheered when I was fired. I was left speechless, my reputation ruined, and my spirit crushed. Now, as Ethan stood before me, clawing at the air like he wanted to attack me, I stayed calm. "No matter what tricks you pull, I won't live with you. Who pays a nanny $10,000 a month? That's a joke." He sneered. I smiled faintly. My heart chilled. Under the influence of my ex-mother-in-law and Ryan, my son had been conditioned from a young age to see me as the most useless and insignificant person in the family, a live-in nanny worth no more than $500 a month. I gently caught Ethan's arm and lightly pushed him away, laughing softly. "Your dad was joking. With his and Donna's financial stability, I trust you'll be fine living with them." Ethan froze for a moment, his expression confused. "Donna's a high-caliber person. She'll treat you like her own," I added with a calm tone. His face brightened. "Exactly. Donna and I get along great. She really understands me and even buys me in-game items. She says I'm talented and will be successful one day." I didn't bother arguing. Ryan, however, started to panic. He crossed his arms and paced anxiously. "Jessica, didn't you say that once Donna has her own child, it might complicate things between the siblings? What are you playing at now?" He was still clinging to his dream of getting rid of both Ethan and me so he could live a carefree life with Donna, and even wanted me to leave with nothing. I smiled sincerely and apologized. I was too narrow-minded before. "I'm sorry. I trust that you'll take good care of Ethan and that Donna will treat him fairly." Ryan was momentarily speechless. Ethan, on the other hand, wore a smug look, as if to say, "Finally, you understand your place." I picked up a pen, calmly added a few clauses to the divorce agreement, and handed it to Ryan. "I have evidence of your affair with Donna," I said coolly. "I don't want the house or the car. All I want is $120,000 in cash." I had no interest in dragging this out with them. I simply wanted to take what I could and move on. Besides, in a few years, the house's value would likely depreciate anyway. My decisiveness caught Ryan off guard. He tried to use Ethan to pressure me, but I cut him off with a single line. "Didn't you always claim to love Ethan the most? Are you really going to quibble over money in front of him?" This was the same tactic he used in my past life, betting that I would back down. But now, I wanted to see how he'd maintain his refined facade in front of Ethan. Surprisingly, Ethan chimed in nonchalantly. "Dad, just give it to her. You and Donna can always earn more. Just make sure the agreement includes a clause that she can't visit me. Think of it as paying for peace of mind." Ryan's face darkened, but then he forced a sinister smile. "Jessica, I know you hate me and want to spite me. Fine, I'll pay. Just don't go back on your word." I rolled my eyes and grabbed the documents, signing my name without hesitation. Ryan instinctively reached out to snatch the pen from me, but I sighed and looked at Ethan. "Ethan, it seems like your father doesn't value you as much as you thought." Ethan's face darkened. He stood up and demanded, "Dad, what does she mean by that? Hurry up and agree already." Ryan hesitated, torn between agreeing to my terms and clinging to the money. After all, the amount I was asking for represented our entire family's savings. But if he wanted to protect his precious Donna, he had no choice. Smiling coldly, I added with a deliberate tone, "Oh, by the way, that job I got, wasn't it arranged by someone named Donna? Funny how a housewife with no professional experience managed to secure a department manager position at the H Group's design department. Maybe I should have a chat with the boss about that." Ryan's face immediately turned pale. He quickly interrupted. All right. Fine. Just give me a few days to think. I laughed bitterly. What? You need Donna's approval even before she's officially moved in? If you wait a few days, my terms will change. Trapped by my words and with Ethan acting as an unhelpful witness, Ryan finally agreed to my conditions. I planned to drag him to the civil affairs office immediately to finalize the divorce. But just as I was about to insist, Donna called him, saying she was bleeding. Both father and son rushed out in a panic, their retreating figures looking almost pathetic. I wasn't in a hurry, though. Unlike my past life, I no longer had the vulnerability of being tied down by a son. If Donna's family thought they could manipulate me into taking Ethan again so they could live their perfect little life, they were dreaming. As soon as they left, I packed my belongings and moved out of the house, diving headfirst into my new life. The moment I was reborn, I had already mapped out a plan for my career. In my previous life, I entered the workforce in my 30s with no experience, competing against younger, more skilled workers. I ended up humiliated and dismissed. Afterward, I returned to street vending, but by then, even college graduates had started entering the trade. They weren't afraid of getting their hands dirty, and their trendy products, sweet talk, and early adoption of technology made them fierce competition. My only edge back then was my determination. I worked harder, started earlier, and stayed later than anyone else, shuttling between multiple stalls to sell out my inventory. Yet, after all that, I still came home to help Ethan with his studies, review his homework, and keep him company. My health deteriorated rapidly as a result. This time, I was more self-aware. I understood my strengths and how to use them to my advantage. Instead of competing blindly in saturated markets, I decided to focus on something I was naturally good at: household management. I was still relatively young and had a degree from a prestigious university. I knew how to handle children and household chores, and I wasn't afraid of hard work. What others might see as my weaknesses, I could turn into strengths in this field. I was confident I could carve out a successful career. In my previous life, while I worked at the company, I'd heard that the general manager, Helen Grant, was a single father with a daughter entering high school. He had openly asked employees to recommend a reliable, high-level housekeeper, someone who could manage their household, take care of daily needs, and tutor his daughter. The salary he offered was incredibly generous, $5,000 a month. I'd been tempted to apply after losing my job, but Ethan had thrown a tantrum, threatening to kill himself if I became a lowly nanny. On top of that, I hadn't touched a textbook in years and felt unqualified to tutor a high schooler. Now, none of those obstacles mattered. I confidently made a call to Helen Grant, introducing myself as someone referred by his company. He asked me to tell him more about myself. I started explaining. Back in my college entrance exams, I scored a 652. If I were to take the current exams again, I could guarantee a score no lower than that. As I spoke, a pang of bitterness crept into my heart. In those days, I wasn't just an excellent student. In college, I was also known for my beauty, a standout in my class. From school uniforms to a wedding dress, Ryan and I had been together for years. But after over a decade as a housewife, I had grown old, overweight, and lost all the brilliance I once had. After Ethan's college exams in my previous life, I quietly tested myself at home and astonishingly scored a 680. Every point was a reflection of my deep love for him, yet he discarded it like trash. In terms of teaching style, you're welcome to test me in person, I continued, my voice steady. Even a rebellious child like my son made it into a top university under my guidance. I can't imagine there's a student I couldn't teach. Helen then asked about my experience in household management. I forced a bitter smile. Does 16 years as a live-in nanny count? My specialties include one-handed cooking while holding a child, eating while holding a child, mopping floors while holding a child, and even preparing milk or changing diapers in my sleep. If needed, I can go without sleep for days to care for a sick or restless baby. Helen chuckled at my humor. Miss Jessica, you have quite the sense of humor. I can tell you're resilient and hardworking. I smiled back, my laughter tinged with tears. Oh, don't underestimate women forged in the fires of family life. Mr. Grant, Helen seemed to form a good initial impression of me and agreed to meet in person to discuss further. Despite a pleasant conversation, he ultimately expressed some reservations. I have a daughter entering high school. If you had certifications in nutrition, health management, and household services, it might strengthen your application. His words reignited my hope. Perhaps I could still get a second chance with him. As soon as we hung up, I signed up for classes in massage therapy, childcare, and medicinal cooking. I even enrolled in fitness and yoga programs. Private lessons cost $70 an hour. But I didn't hesitate. This time, I learned to invest in myself. This point in life, I understood that relying on myself was better than depending on anyone else. Besides, I was still a housewife, spending Ryan's money. If I didn't use it now, it would go to waste. It wasn't long before Ryan called, demanding I return home to finalize the divorce. The moment I arrived, I knew it would be a stormy day. My mother-in-law, usually busy with her square dance group, was at home for once. The moment she saw me, she started ranting. How could you just quit over such a trivial matter? What about me and Ethan? Don't we need to eat? Ethan, utterly indifferent, shrugged. If she doesn't want to cook, then don't. Grandma, we've been ordering takeout these past few days, and it's been great. Especially the fried chicken. My mother-in-law choked on her words, her face twisting with anger. I glanced at Ethan's acne-ridden face and felt no emotional stirrings whatsoever. The sink reeked from unwashed dishes, and the trash can was overflowing. Ignoring it all, I wiped the dust off a chair, sat down, and teased, "Mom, why not save your energy for training your new daughter-in-law? After over a decade of cooking for you, even on the day of my divorce, you still won't let me off the hook." She flung her cleaning cloth aside in frustration, her expression livid as she pointed at me. "Jessica, no wonder Ethan doesn't want to deal with you. You're nothing but negativity." I replied calmly, "I never intended to fight for custody. Ryan cheated. And you expect me to take Ethan with me and let them enjoy their carefree lives? I'm not that foolish." Her face turned green with rage, and I continued, "Keeping Ethan here to torment them is something I'm more than happy to do." You, she stammered, her fury rendering her speechless. Finally, she clutched her chest and lamented dramatically. "What a sin. Jessica, you're just taking your anger out on him," my mother-in-law said, her tone accusing. "Poor Ethan is innocent in all of this. Aren't you worried that one day he'll cut ties with you and refuse to take care of you in your old age?" I let out a cold laugh. He already threw my ashes into the trash in the last life. Cutting ties? Refusing to support me? That's nothing. My words were sharp, and my tone was icy as I continued. "Thanks to all of you for years of slandering me in front of him, degrading me, and painting me as the villain. You're all saints, and I'm the only bad guy. Well, congratulations. You've succeeded. I'm officially done. Consider Ethan a gift from me." I raised my voice and called toward the bedroom. "Ryan, didn't you call me back to finalize the divorce? What are you hiding for?" After a long pause, the tightly shut door finally opened. Ryan stepped out, supporting Donna, whose belly hadn't yet begun to show. My mother-in-law rushed over immediately, fretting, "Oh dear, be careful. We can't risk anything happening to my precious grandson." Ethan, visibly annoyed by her behavior, threw his phone onto the couch and snapped, "Grandma, you already have a grandson. And besides, still so tiny. How do you even know if it's a boy or a girl?" Donna smiled sweetly, her voice soft but pointed. "Ethan, I went to Hong Kong for a checkup. It's a boy." Ryan frowned and scolded. "Ethan, is that any way to talk to Donna? Stop barging around the house like that from now on." My mother-in-law chimed in quickly. "Ethan, you need to start caring for your little brother. Now, why don't you clean up this mess over here?" Ethan kicked the coffee table hard, spun on his heel, and stormed off. "Whoever made the mess can clean it up. I'm not doing it." He slammed the door to his room so hard it echoed through the house. Ryan's face turned red with anger, a hint of disappointment flashing in his eyes. My mother-in-law hurriedly turned to Donna to placate her. "He's just a child. Donna, I'll talk to him later. He just needs some time to adjust. You and Ryan have such a good relationship. He'll come around." Donna's eyes glistened with tears, and she nodded, sitting down with an aggrieved expression. But as Ethan turned to leave, I caught a glimpse of the malicious glint in his eyes as he looked at Donna's stomach. That venomous gaze spoke volumes. In my past life, I had taken Ethan with me before Donna even revealed the gender of her child, fearing how he'd react to his father and grandmother's blatant favoritism. Ethan, selfish and egotistical as he was, would never tolerate a younger sibling stealing the spotlight. Back then, I spared him the truth, unwilling to shatter his illusions. To him, I bore the burden of every unpleasant task at home, while his grandmother was a carefree, stylish woman who danced at community events, and his father was a cultured, good-tempered man who could provide anything he wanted. But this time, I was done playing the martyr. This was going to get ugly. We'd all get dirty together. Why should I bear all the suffering and humiliation alone? After watching the drama unfold, I turned to Ryan, my tone calm but deliberate. About the assets. Our agreement is already settled. Why not get it over with today? Let's go to the civil affairs office. Donna, seated beside him, interjected smoothly. Jessica, isn't it customary for divorcing couples to discuss custody before dividing assets? I raised an eyebrow, shifting my gaze between Ryan and Ethan. I thought we had already reached a consensus on that matter. What exactly is your concern? Donna forced a polite laugh, her words insincere. Of course, I'd love for Ethan to stay. Ryan and I both would. But as a woman, I admit I'd prefer to have my own child with us. Jessica, I just didn't expect you'd feel so comfortable leaving Ethan behind. I smiled faintly, unmoved by her veiled jab. Donna, you've raised a child before. You're not some inexperienced girl. I trust you to take good care of him. Donna's face froze for a moment, and she glanced at Ryan, whose slight shake of the head didn't escape my notice. That's when I realized they had brought her here today to test my resolve, to see if I genuinely didn't want custody. Just then, Ethan came out of his room to get a drink of water. He acted nonchalant, but I could tell he was listening closely to every word of our negotiation. Donna shot a glance at Ethan before turning her gaze to me, her expression carrying a hint of provocation. Jessica, we're both divorced women raising kids. Forgive me for being blunt, but children are usually better off with their mother. When I raised my daughter alone, it was hard, but I gritted my teeth and got through it. I'm not trying to brag. It's just that fathers tend to be inattentive. You've raised Ethan all these years. Are you really okay letting him go? Before I could reply, Ethan stormed over, pointing a finger at Donna. Why are you trying to kick me out? Didn't you say you liked me and wanted to be my mom? Donna's face froze, caught between frustration and embarrassment. She had intended to provoke conflict between Ethan and me to test my resolve, but she hadn't anticipated this tactic backfiring so spectacularly. Ethan's resentment toward me was already deep enough because I hadn't given him the wealthy, happy life he dreamed of with his father. So how could he tolerate Donna trying to replace him now? Sure enough, Ethan escalated. You brought your daughter in here to enjoy the good life, and now you want to kick me out to suffer? What's your deal? If you keep this up, I won't help you anymore. His defiant stance made it seem like he had caught Donna red-handed, holding her to account. I almost laughed out loud. My silly son. In the past, Donna had humored and spoiled him because she was a divorced woman with a child of her own and had to tread carefully. Now, with the child in her belly as her trump card, she had far more confidence. Donna struggled to suppress her discomfort, but she couldn't lash out at Ethan. Instead, she forced a smile and tried to placate him. Ethan, how could I ever want to kick you out? I like you too much for that. I'm only worried that your mom might not care for you as much in the future. Ethan cast me a dismissive glance. As long as you and Dad like me, that's enough. One less person doesn't matter. Donna turned to me with a look of triumph, but I was entirely unfazed. I shrugged and said, nice try, but reverse psychology doesn't work on me. Then, with a deliberately exaggerated gesture, I gave her a thumbs up. Donna, you've set a new standard for stepmoms. I'm impressed. Ryan finally lost his patience and stood up. Enough. Jessica, I never realized you were this cruel and sarcastic. Isn't this just about you wanting money instead of Ethan? Fine. I'll give you what you want. My mother-in-law joined in. jabbing her finger at me. Think carefully about this. If you walk out that door, you and Ethan won't have anything to do with each other anymore. Don't come crying to me later. Because it won't work. Watching their anger and desperation, I felt a surge of satisfaction. Finally, it was their turn to feel powerless and consumed by negativity. Donna, however, couldn't let it go. How is it fair that a stay-at-home mom who hasn't earned a single cent gets so much? We'll have to raise our own child soon while she just walks away carefree. I smiled at Ryan without saying a word. His face turned dark as he pulled Donna aside to explain. Donna, brimming with indignation, marched right back to me. What? Are you going to sue me now? I'm a senior employee at the company. To most, you'll expose some negligence on my part. But I can sue you for falsifying your resume. I'll make sure every HR department in the industry knows about you. And you'll never get another job. Back when Donna's family arranged that job for me, they had planned it all from the start. I had never submitted any resume, knowing it was a setup. Donna's threat was nothing but an attempt to intimidate me. Slowly, I pulled out my phone. Well, I suppose I should give Helen Grant a call and explain how I got the job. Imagine, a mistress going so far as to help the ex-wife get hired. Surely, Mr. Grant would want to reward such a generous employee. Donna's lips twitched into a sneer, her attitude defiant. She was like a pig unbothered by boiling water, entirely shameless. But then I casually read aloud Helen Grant's direct phone number, 131-45-87. Her expression shifted immediately. Enough, she yelled, clearly rattled. I'm not going to argue with you anymore. I wasn't interested in arguing either. I endured everything until I finally had that red divorce certificate in my hands. I walked out of the room with a calm demeanor and a sharp smile, speaking each word deliberately. Donna, make sure you treasure your position as the HR director at H Group. Donna's lips trembled with rage as her eyes burned with hatred. But I simply smiled lightly and left with confidence. Ethan didn't even glance at me. Instead, the whole family sat together, their camaraderie on full display. Fine. If Donna was so skilled at winning people over, I was curious to see whether my disappointing son would measure up to their picture-perfect new family. After the divorce, I returned to my apartment, luxuriating in a hot bath and then rolling around on the soft bed. I felt an overwhelming urge to scream with delight. This is what life is supposed to feel like. From that point on, my days were packed with training sessions and fitness routines. I felt energized, mentally sharp, and alive. Even the sound of the wind seemed to carry a sweetness. With $80,000 in hand, I now had the resources to reinvent myself and pursue a career as a top-tier personal housekeeper. Who said being a domestic worker couldn't be a path to success? If others found it shameful, I would prove them wrong by excelling beyond their imagination. When I saw my young, tall, and muscular personal trainer for the first time, a flicker of long-dormant hormones stirred within me. As we measured my fitness stats, I felt deeply ashamed of the neglected state of my body. For so many years, I had never treated myself with care or respect. In just 1 week, I lost over 15 pounds, thanks to my initial weight. Having hit rock bottom, every little change felt monumental. Each step forward gave me hope. Like a barren old tree sprouting fresh leaves, I rediscovered the excitement I'd felt when I first got into college. The ambition and pride of setting out to conquer the world. I vowed to be in my best shape, both physically and professionally, for my first interview. In just 2 months, I not only earned certifications in nutrition and household management, but also achieved significant fitness results. I had to replace my workout clothes 4 times as I downsized through the sizes. My transformation was so noticeable that the gym's management approached me with an offer. They were expanding their operations and wanted to feature me in their advertising campaign. Ms. Jessica, your transformation perfectly matches the theme of our upcoming campaign. Rebirth from despair. We'd love to use your photos and videos for promotional materials. We're even considering filming a few commercials with you. The manager explained enthusiastically. I smiled faintly. $5,000. I replied plainly. The manager blinked, surprised. Our company doesn't have the budget for that. How about I talk to your trainer and offer you 30 hours of private lessons instead? Then I'm afraid we won't have a deal. I said firmly. That's already a discounted rate. Seeing me ready to leave, The manager hurriedly blocked my path, pleading with a forced smile. Miss Jessica, let's talk this over. How about 50 hours? Consider it a gesture of goodwill toward Trainer Sue. I shook his hand off and looked him squarely in the eye. My voice turned icy. If that's the angle you're taking, then forget it. Do you think I've never seen a man before? I'm not interested. I knew full well that this gym was a gathering place for middle-class housewives seeking more than just workouts with their trainers. But I had no patience for such nonsense. Men, as a species, were something I decided to steer clear of for life. After all, I was a woman who had willingly given up custody of her own son. Realizing I wasn't playing games, the manager apologized profusely. Few days later, $5,000 appeared in my bank account. What I hadn't anticipated was how successful the campaign would be. The gym's membership numbers skyrocketed, and one day, while I was in the lounge, I unexpectedly ran into Helen Grant. He had become a client of the gym and was here for his workout. He glanced me over, his expression full of unhidden admiration. When I saw the ad, I thought it looked a lot like you. I didn't expect it actually was you, he said with a slight smile. I responded with confidence, giving him a brief update on the certifications I'd earned. He nodded approvingly. Good. The school year is starting soon. I'll arrange a time for you to come by for an in-home interview. By coincidence, Helen had also chosen Trainer Sue, which meant we began crossing paths more frequently. As Helen and I continued to cross paths, our interactions became increasingly professional and reserved. I was cautious not to overstep any boundaries, focusing instead on maintaining a solid impression. Helen Grant represented the perfect stepping stone for my future career in household management. Securing this high-paying job was my top priority. Through our conversations, I gradually learned about Helen's family situation. Both he and his ex-wife were highly ambitious professionals. After his ex-wife was sent to manage a branch office in Hong Kong, the two began to drift apart. Over time, her career flourished, and she decided to settle permanently in Hong Kong. Helen, however, was unwilling to give up his business here. They struggled to reconcile their differences for years, ultimately divorcing earlier this year, with their child staying under Helen's care. One day, during a candid discussion, Helen remarked, "If either of us had been more like you, Miss Jessica, someone willing to prioritize the family, perhaps things wouldn't have come to this." I smiled bitterly. If my ex-husband hadn't crossed certain lines, I would have been more than willing to endure the hardships and keep our family together. Helen chuckled softly. It seems that all the good men and women end up in someone else's home. The conversation was beginning to tread into ambiguous territory. To steer it back, I responded earnestly. Your divorce wasn't about right or wrong, Helen. It was about irreconcilable differences. As for me, if I had been more independent and assertive, perhaps I wouldn't have been taken advantage of the way I was. In the end, though, it's better to look forward to the future. That day, we talked at length, and I noticed that Helen's gaze toward me grew increasingly approving and even admiring. Later, Trainer Sue privately asked me, "Helen seems to be paying a lot of attention to you. Is he interested in pursuing something more with you?" I laughed at the suggestion. Someone like Helen Grant, a seasoned, results-driven elite, has countless options. If he's paying attention to me, it's not because of romantic interest. He's evaluating me, trying to determine whether I have the ambition to rise higher in his world. I understood that successful businessmen like Helen held those closest to them to extremely high standards. I didn't have the energy or the aspirations to meet such expectations. Not after everything I'd been through. I died once already, and in this second chance at life, I had no illusions about men. This time, I just wanted to live independently and enjoy my freedom. Just as my life was steadily improving, trouble inevitably found its way to me. One day, after finishing a workout with Trainer Sue, I was ambushed by Ryan's mother, Mrs. Chun Farong, who grabbed me by the hair right in the middle of a busy shopping district. It was rush hour, and the streets were teeming with people. She shouted, "Jessica, no wonder you abandoned your son. You're using Ryan's money to support your boy toy. You shameless tramp." I yanked myself free and retorted sharply, "Mrs. Chun, your son cheated on me, and we're divorced now. How is this any of your business?" The crowd began murmuring, pointing fingers at us, which only made Mrs. Chun more furious. Her eyes darted around before she turned to Ethan, who had been standing nearby. She gestured wildly, calling out, "Ethan, tell her we came to see her. What kind of mother abandons her child like this? Even if you're divorced, you still have a responsibility to care for your son." I shot back coldly, "How have I neglected him? I send child support payments to you every month on time." Mrs. Chun clutched her chest dramatically, wailing like a woman possessed. "That little money barely covers anything. You should come to our house every week to spend time with him. If you have time to chase after men, why don't you care about your son?" Her words earned the sympathy of onlookers, and she used the opportunity to play up her performance. With spittle flying, she painted me as a selfish, heartless woman who had abandoned her family for a life of debauchery. Trainer Sue, unable to tolerate her slander any longer, stepped forward and grabbed her arm. "Apologize to her, or I'll sue you for defamation," he said firmly. I stepped aside, looking at Ethan, who had kept his head lowered the entire time. I spoke with deliberate clarity. "Mrs. Chun, it's been a few days, and you've turned into a real shrew. Don't forget, you pride yourself on being the most modern and carefree grandma, even the lead dancer in your performance group. Don't do something so disgraceful." Ethan, being the selfish and image-conscious person he was, couldn't possibly align himself with his grandmother's public theatrics. His face turned dark as he grabbed Mrs. Chen's arm, muttering, "Grandma, why bother pandering to her? She doesn't care about me now, but one day she'll get old too." Then, as if unable to resist, he turned and challenged me. "Tisich, what are you so proud of? When I grow up, I won't acknowledge you. When you're old and bedridden, I'll pull out your oxygen tube." The crowd gasped in unison, and the atmosphere shifted immediately. Mrs. Chun was so furious her lips twitched, and she nearly choked on her breath. I suppressed my laughter. My silly son had no idea how frail his grandmother looked after only a few days apart. If she hadn't been truly desperate, why else would she have come here, shamelessly blocking me to demand I return and take care of him? As I watched Ethan stomp away with determined steps, I fixed my gaze on his back for a long moment. "Son, keep being exactly as you are." Afterward, I apologized to Trainer Sue, who stared at me with an expression of incredulity. Pointing to the departing figure, he asked, "That's your son?" I nodded calmly. "Yes, my biological son." He looked utterly baffled. Speechless for a moment, I gave him a faint smile, bid him farewell, and left. It's nothing. Having lived through this once already, I deeply understood that while family love could be selfless and unconditional, the world was not short on heartless mothers or ungrateful sons. In my past life, if I hadn't witnessed the end, I never would have believed that the son I had painstakingly raised hated me so deeply. Each time Ethan broke my heart back then, I would comfort myself by saying, "He's just young and doesn't understand yet. If I teach him more, he'll change." But no matter how much I sacrificed, no matter how much I fed him my efforts in bite-sized lessons, he never learned to see others' contributions or show gratitude. He inherited the cold, selfish nature of Ryan's family and took it further, becoming so brazen he didn't even bother hiding it. I thought that incident might bring some peace, but instead, more trouble followed. First, Helen subtly asked if I had fully resolved issues with my previous marriage and offered his help if needed. My heart sank. He must have heard some rumors. Then, the next day, Ryan showed up at the training center where I was taking classes. When he saw me, he scanned me up and down, as if trying to confirm something. "Jessica, it really is you," he muttered, his eyes narrowing. Once he was sure, his gaze lingered inappropriately, filled with a disgusting mix of surprise and satisfaction. I brushed non-existent dust off my shoulder, smirking coldly. Only then did he snap out of it, his tone turning snide. "No wonder you don't want custody of Ethan. Divorce suits you. I bet you've been hooking up with someone else for a while now. Have you seen a psychiatrist for that paranoia of yours?" I scoffed, unimpressed. He continued bitterly, "You look decent now that you've slimmed down. Managed to catch Helen Grant's attention. Huh, but don't get your hopes up. He'd never be interested in an old woman like you. There are plenty of younger women in his company who'd love to be with him. At that moment, I was certain it was Ryan who had been badmouthing me to Helen. I dragged him into a corner, lowering my voice but sharpening my tone. What exactly are you trying to do, Ryan? He smirked smugly. What do you think? Ruin your good times. Of course. You threw Ethan at me so you could live it up. Not a chance. I took a deep breath, unwilling to waste my energy on this man. Fine. Say what you came to say. What is it you and your mother want from me? Ryan's expression shifted to one of triumph. Come home with me. There's something we need to discuss. You think divorce is a game? Ryan sneered. Come back home with me. I laughed out of sheer frustration. Home? What home? We're divorced. Ryan. He was unfazed, clearly prepared. Taking out his phone, he showed me a video. On the screen, a shrill voice screamed, "Get out, you bastard. If you die out there, don't come back." I grabbed the phone from him, my hands trembling. The video showed the living room of Ryan's house in utter disarray. A child wailed heartbreakingly on the couch, while a disheveled, overweight woman yanked a man's hair, shouting and pushing him toward the door. She looked completely unhinged. The man in the video pleaded meekly, "Honey, I was wrong. Let me see the child. Please. He's crying so much. Get out. Don't come back. My son and I don't need you." The woman yelled. I couldn't watch any longer. My body trembled, my hands and feet cold. When did you install surveillance cameras in the house? I shouted. Ryan replied without hesitation. Jessica, I've got plenty of videos of you losing it, breaking down, acting ugly. What do you think would happen if I sent these to Helen Grant? Do you think he'd still look at you the same way? I closed my eyes tightly, trying to suppress the storm of emotions. Fine, I said coldly. Let's see just how low you're willing to sink. I got into Ryan's car without another word, staring silently out the window. I thought I had moved on from my past life, that I could leave everything behind. But seeing those moments of blood, sweat, and tears captured so cruelly on video brought it all back, leaving me shaking. Anyone who saw the footage would think, what a barbaric, slovenly, heartless woman, cold toward her child and unreasonable to her husband. But they wouldn't know the truth. That video was taken when Ethan was 5 and battling pneumonia. My mother-in-law had helped for a day before finding an excuse to leave for her dance group. Ryan was busy with work, ignoring my frantic calls. For 4 days and nights, I cared for Ethan on my own, enduring his endless coughing fits, begging doctors and nurses for help, and being scolded when I couldn't follow their instructions perfectly. I couldn't sleep for fear that he might stop breathing in the middle of the night. On the 4th day, Ryan finally returned. My pent-up exhaustion and despair exploded, resulting in the chaotic scene captured on video. And that bastard had installed surveillance cameras in the house, not to help, but to spy on me, silently collecting footage of my worst moments, saving it for years to use against me. This man's betrayal went far beyond mere infidelity. I shook uncontrollably with rage, my body convulsing. Ryan, oblivious to my seething anger, suddenly reached out and placed his hand on my thigh. His voice oozed with fake sincerity. Honey, come back. I didn't realize until you were gone that this family can't function without you. Suppressing my nausea, I asked icily. And Donna? He squeezed my thigh tightly and smirked. She's not an issue. The baby's still small. And she's older, so her pregnancy is unstable. We haven't even registered our marriage yet. I couldn't hold back any longer. I slapped him hard across the face. Scum, I spat. When we arrived at Ryan's house, I was hit by the overwhelming stench of unwashed trash and stale air. Ethan was sitting on the couch, playing video games with a girl about his age. The girl giggled as she held Ethan's smelly foot. Ethan, you're amazing. You have to play with me all the time. Okay. Of course. Ethan replied smugly. I'm climbing the ranks. Pretty impressive. Right. Mrs. Chan greeted me loudly, clearly intending for her words to sting. Jessica, look how well Ethan and little Exion get along. They're just like real siblings. Donna, lounging on the couch and munching on sunflower seeds, chimed in impatiently. Mom, this place is such a mess. I can't even step anywhere without tripping. Mrs. Chan, exhausted, let out a sigh and tossed the cleaning rag aside. Jessica, from now on, you need to come to the house once a week to clean and prepare meals for the week. That way, you won't need to pay child support for Ethan. Donna chimed in with a smug smile. I heard you're trying to apply to be Helen Grant's housekeeper. He's been looking for someone for over 6 months, but hasn't found anyone who meets his standards. You can't just sit around waiting for a miracle. Ethan put down his phone, his face full of disdain. You're so pathetic. I thought you'd change after the divorce. But you're still just going to be someone else's maid. Ryan, clearly enjoying himself, added mockingly, think of it as doing something for your son. We're not asking much. Just once a week. And then it clicked. This entire family wanted to keep exploiting me for free labor. Mrs. Chun, trying to mask her discomfort, muttered, coming 4 times a month for $1,000 isn't too bad for you. Exactly, I said with feigned politeness. Compared to before, when I was on call 24/7, taking care of the child, cooking, and running the household, it's certainly an upgrade. I didn't argue further, just asked with mock confusion, but why not stick with the maid you're paying $3,000 a month? Mrs. Chun averted her eyes, but Ethan blurted out, we've already switched through 7 or 8 maids. None of them are any good. They refuse to do this or that. I don't understand what makes a maid so arrogant. Suppressing my irritation, I turned to Ethan. Ethan, you want your mom to come back as your maid, serving your dad and stepmom. Have you ever considered how your mom feels about this? He shrugged dismissively. You're going to be a maid anyway, so why not just do it at home? At least no one will laugh at you for it. I tossed my hair back, taking a moment to steady myself. My cold, selfish son never failed to disappoint me. Unfortunately, you can't afford me now, I said with a sigh. If you're willing to pay $5,000 a month, I might reconsider. Donna let out a mocking laugh. Know your place, she sneered. Ethan's eyes widened. You're worth that much? Ryan, his tone threatening, added, even if you do get the job, you won't last. Mark my words. We'll see, I replied curtly, unwilling to waste more time on them. I turned to leave. This place isn't just filthy, so are the people. Watch out. A disaster is brewing in this family, and I won't be cleaning it up. Having learned that Ryan had been keeping surveillance videos to use against me, I decided it was time to take the initiative. I planned to meet with Helen Grant, but only after the formal interview. I wanted him to see my abilities first, ensuring he would evaluate the situation objectively. The day of the interview arrived. There were 10 candidates, including young, beautiful women and even multilingual international students. I silently congratulated myself for choosing this career path so decisively. The interview went as smoothly as I had anticipated. The younger, prettier candidates lacked my efficiency and resilience. They hesitated when facing messier, tougher tasks. The older candidates didn't have my education or skills. Most importantly, I had no personal baggage or distractions, which meant I could dedicate myself entirely to the role. My adaptability and focus were unmatched. Helen's daughter, Sweetie, was thrilled with my trial tutoring session, saying, Dad, she's way better than my school teachers. She makes everything so easy to understand and fun. We should hire her. She's amazing at every subject. Helen didn't make an immediate decision, simply telling us to wait for his response. The next day, I ran into him at the gym and invited him out for dinner after his workout. During the meal, I deliberately ordered a bottle of red wine. With liquid courage in hand, I took a deep breath and asked, Did you happen to see any videos of me? He didn't avoid the question. Donna did send me some clips, but I'd like to hear your side of the story. I downed a glass of wine, gathering my composure. Then, in a calm and objective tone, I recounted the blood, sweat, and tears I had endured during my years in Ryan's household. The manipulative mother-in-law who delighted in belittling me, the selfish ex-husband who shirked responsibility while playing the perfect man, and their relentless attempts to alienate Ethan from me with petty bribes. My ex-husband, a man who prided himself on belittling his wife, was the epitome of toxic masculinity, selfish and arrogant. My son, raised in his shadow, inherited the same disdain for me. His mother, over more than a decade of marriage, I lived like a caged beast, battered and scarred, capable only of powerless roars, breakdowns, and outbursts of despair. I wiped my tears and looked at Helen Grant with a bitter smile. It's pathetic and laughable, but I was truly a mess back then. There's no escaping that fact. Helen listened patiently, his demeanor calm and composed. He handed me his handkerchief and replaced my wine with tea. I recognized this as the mark of a gentleman, a reflection of the upbringing he'd clearly received. I was grateful he had given me the space to explain myself. Years of pent-up pain and exhaustion finally broke free, and I cried for a full 10 minutes before I could regain composure. I couldn't tell if Helen fully accepted or understood my explanation, but at this point, I no longer cared. Being forced into this position, I decided I wouldn't let Donna and Ryan get away with their schemes. After gathering my thoughts, I spoke firmly. Mr. Grant, I know being a mistress isn't a qualification for employment, but Donna has repeatedly abused her position for personal gain. She not only manipulated me in the past but is now infringing on my privacy and trying to force me back into servitude for their family. You don't have to hire me, but I urge you to seriously reconsider Donna's character. I took a deep breath and, beyond the incriminating video, presented him with a collection of Donna and Ryan's conversations. Among them were records of Donna bribing H Group's procurement manager to favor Ryan's company. This led to the company purchasing substandard products at inflated prices. Here are the source suppliers' price lists. I explained. Ryan's company is merely a third-tier distributor, and due to Donna's interference, H Group has unknowingly incurred at least $300,000 in additional costs over the past year. Helen glanced at the documents, set them down gently, and tapped his fingers on the table. His sharp gaze locked onto me. Jessica, he asked suddenly, was your initial self-recommendation just a means to set this up? I stared at him, stunned, and it took me a moment to realize what he was implying. Helen thought I had approached him with a calculated plan to exact revenge on my ex-husband and Donna. My hands clenched into fists as indignation surged through me. Mr. Grant, I began, steadying my voice. I understand why you might think that, but let me clarify. First, I fully respect and value my chosen profession. I pursued this career path after careful consideration and have worked hard to excel in it. Second, my grievances with Ryan and Donna ended the moment our divorce was finalized. If they hadn't pushed me this far, you wouldn't be hearing about this now. Helen studied me intently for a long moment before breaking the tension with a teasing tone. Even if I'm losing hundreds of thousands a year, you're saying it's none of your concern. I hesitated but chose honesty. That's correct. I'm not a self-proclaimed hero of justice. I'm simply a woman who knows how to protect her own rights. If Ryan and Donna hadn't provoked me, I wouldn't go out of my way to make enemies. Cutting off someone's income is as serious as taking a life. After all, and let's not forget, H Group's losses stem from internal mismanagement, including poor personnel choices. So, Mr. Grant, you really don't need to thank me. Helen's composed demeanor cracked into a rare smile. Relax. This matter has nothing to do with you personally. Besides, as a businessman, I wouldn't let something so trivial cloud my judgment. I returned his smile. I'm just glad you don't misunderstand me. Helen concluded the conversation gracefully. I've understood everything clearly. Thank you for your honesty, Jessica. Despite his words, I couldn't shake the lingering unease. No employer would willingly hire a live-in housekeeper prone to emotional breakdowns and volatility. Still, I refused to be discouraged. I had already prepared myself for the worst outcome. That night, I meticulously updated my resume and sent it to several well-known domestic management agencies. I wouldn't pin all my hopes on one opportunity. Helen's response to Donna's actions was swift and decisive. She was terminated immediately and received a legal notice demanding compensation for the losses caused by her abuse of power during her tenure. That was when I realized the extent of Donna's misuse of her role as HR manager. She had orchestrated more than just bribery to benefit Ryan. The compensation claims alone would be enough to ruin her financially, potentially even leading to jail time. As for Ryan, he was promptly disqualified as a supplier to H Group, although most of the blame fell on Donna, which spared Ryan's business from collapsing entirely. His losses were still significant. Donna slunk back to Ryan's home to focus on her pregnancy. Meanwhile, I received an unexpected offer letter from Helen Grant. To my surprise, he not only hired me but also added a $1,000 monthly raise to apologize for his earlier misunderstanding. My new salary was $6,000 a month. Oddly enough, I hesitated. Could I truly thrive under such a shrewd employer? But Helen, ever the cunning fox, pitched his offer with ease. Jessica, I might not be offering the highest salary in the market, but I guarantee my household relationships will be the simplest you'll find. This, I couldn't refuse. For someone new to the field, working for a single father like Helen was an ideal opportunity. I didn't disappoint him. My work ethic, skills, and proactive attitude gave him peace of mind. Our collaboration was seamless, and I genuinely enjoyed my role. The next time I encountered Ryan's family was outside Helen's gated community. The security guard informed me that a noisy group of people was demanding to see me. I felt relieved knowing I'd chosen Helen as my employer. His work schedule and Sweetie's school hours left my afternoons flexible, giving me the perfect opportunity to deal with the Ryans. Before heading out, I deliberately dressed in designer clothes and shoes, carrying an LV bag. Money was no longer an issue for me. Thanks to my role in managing the Grant household, I had joined the Homeowners Association and built connections with other residents and their household staff. I even brokered a few deals, using my divorce settlement to invest in a small domestic services company. Many residents in the villa complex were now my clients. Helen was fully aware of my entrepreneurial efforts and supported me, as long as my work with his family wasn't affected. After Sweetie's academic performance improved significantly during my 3-month probation period, Helen voluntarily extended my contract to 10 years, confident that I wouldn't leave. This mutual trust made me work even harder. When I arrived at the gate, the security guard captain quickly approached me. "Miss Jessica, someone claiming to be your son is causing a commotion, insisting on seeing you." I apologized and walked toward the gathered group. Ryan greeted me warmly, stepping forward with enthusiasm. "Honey," he paused, scanning me, and awkwardly corrected himself. "Jessica." I chuckled coldly, still half asleep. "Ryan," feigning innocence. He smiled weakly, then nudged Ethan forward. "Go on, Ethan. Call her Mom." Ethan hesitated before shuffling toward me, disbelief in his eyes. "Are you really my mom?" I studied him silently. He had gained weight. His face bloated and oily, with dark circles under his eyes. His clothes were wrinkled, as if they hadn't been washed in days. He looked utterly disheveled and lethargic. When I didn't respond, Ethan frowned and muttered, "I heard you're working as a maid for some rich guy?" "Actually, I'm a professional house manager." I corrected him. "You're old enough now to broaden your perspective. Keep up with the times." Donna, resting a hand on her visibly pregnant belly, sneered bitterly. "Big sister, I heard you're making $6,000 a month now. That's more than some senior executives earn." Mrs. Chun let out a loud gasp. $6,000 a month?" she exclaimed, her voice rising. At that moment, the security guard captain turned to Donna and quipped, "You look at least 10 years older than Miss Jessica. Calling her big sister seems a bit generous, doesn't it?" I couldn't help but laugh. Donna touched her face, her expression shifting between anger and embarrassment. Without her executive title or any savings, her arrogance had long since lost its footing. Mrs. Chen's eyes widened as she stormed toward me, exclaiming, "You're making $6,000 a month, but only paying $1,000 in child support? That's unacceptable. At least give us $5,000 and keep just $1,000 for yourself. That's more than enough for a woman." Her audacious entitlement made me laugh outright. It was the first time I truly understood how ignorant and greedy my mother-in-law was at her core. "Do you think that just because I was once your daughter-in-law and you held power over me for a while, you can control my entire life?" I asked coldly. She faltered, momentarily lost for words. Then, with a quick glance at Ethan, she grabbed him by the arm and said, "And what about Ethan? Even if you're divorced, you're still his mother. If you're not giving your money to him, who else should get it?" I turned my gaze to Ethan. Though he resented me, he was old enough to recognize right from wrong. Avoiding my eyes, he shrank behind Mrs. Chun, mumbling, Give the money to Grandma to keep, and I'll still acknowledge you. No need. I replied icily. I'm not your mother anymore. Ethan froze, his face reddening with anger and embarrassment. What's so great about you? Anyway, you're just a maid making $6,000 a month. Do you think people are stupid? You must be someone's mistress. I don't want your dirty money. This child was beyond saving. Ryan awkwardly scratched his nose, trying to diffuse the tension. Jessica, don't take it to heart. Ethan's just trying to say you're looking great now. I had no idea you were this capable. Ignoring his feigned flattery, I turned to Mrs. Chun and said firmly, what I earn has nothing to do with any of you. The divorce agreement explicitly states that I'm not allowed to visit Ethan, so don't try to use him to threaten me. And as for you, Ryan, don't show your face in front of me again. Didn't the slap in the car last time hurt enough? Donna's face darkened as she grabbed Ryan's ear and demanded, what does she mean by that? Are you regretting things now that she's rich and beautiful? Are you planning to dump me after ruining my career? No way. Ryan frantically tried to calm her down, stammering out excuses. Meanwhile, Mrs. Chun, realizing I wasn't going to negotiate, pushed Ethan toward me and declared, fine. If you won't pay, then take Ethan with you. Don't think you can live a good life on your own while we suffer. Their shamelessness almost amused me. I turned to Ethan and asked, so this is the plan you all came up with together? Ethan's face twisted as his eyes darted around. Suddenly, he grabbed my hand and began to cry. Mom, Dad and Grandma don't care about me at all. They only like the baby Donna's carrying. Once he's born, I'll have no place in this family. I stared at him silently, watching his performance. He wiped his tears dramatically and pointed at Donna. Mom, she's awful. She secretly badmouths me behind Grandma and Dad's back. Says I'm useless, and only cares about her daughter. She even sneaks her daughter extra allowance while I get nothing. Life at home is terrible. Ethan, you've changed, I said, smiling faintly. You've learned how to act now. But honestly, I preferred the old you, the one with a backbone. Don't make me lose respect for you. Exposed. His face turned red, and he reluctantly let go of my hand, still muttering, Mom, I don't understand what you're saying. I couldn't be bothered to respond. Instead, I turned to the security guard captain and said, call the police. They're here to extort me. I warned coldly, don't ever use Ethan to threaten me again. If you keep treating the divorce agreement as a joke, I'll make sure Ryan's little company won't survive. Sweat immediately broke out on Ryan's forehead. Was Donna's situation you're doing? He stammered. I smirked faintly. Ryan, with all your flaws, do you think I need to do anything underhanded to ruin you? Ryan gritted his teeth and pointed a trembling finger at me. Jessica, you've got some nerve. Let's see how long you can stay smug. Seeing that the security captain had already called the police, Ryan quickly pulled his family away. Ethan, frustrated by his failure and humiliated by me, suddenly rushed forward and shoved me hard. You're a vicious woman. Go to hell. I'm done with you. You're nothing but a dirty maid. Not even fit to carry my dad's shoes. So what if you have some filthy money now? Disgusting. Caught off guard, I stumbled in my high heels, twisting my ankle sharply. Pain shot through my leg, but I gritted my teeth and stood firm. As long as you stay away from me, you'll never see me again, I said coldly. The family stormed off in anger. Although I had long since decided to give up on Ethan, today solidified just how deeply he had been poisoned by his upbringing. His contempt for me had been etched into his bones from a young age, thanks to the influence of Ryan and Mrs. Chun. His earlier tears and pleas were nothing but an attempt to manipulate me for his own gain. The moment he realized he'd been exposed, his true feelings came out in full force. His insults were genuine. If anything, I had to admit that Ryan and Mrs. Chun had succeeded in raising Ethan exactly as they wanted. Selfish, cold, and devoid of gratitude. Still, Ethan's accusations against Donna likely weren't lies. I could only wait for the day when their complex second marriage family dynamic completely imploded. When Helen Grant returned and heard about the incident, he pondered aloud. Do you want me to deal with Ryan? I could make a call, and he wouldn't last long as a distributor. People like him don't survive in this industry if I say the word. I shook my head. Forget it. He's still Ethan's father. Besides, if I completely ruin him, I'll end up stuck with Ethan. And I'm not that foolish. Helen nodded understandingly and asked about my injury. How's your leg? Should I call the family doctor? It's nothing, I replied quickly. Ethan's just a kid. He doesn't have that much strength. Doesn't affect me. I was more worried you'd blame me for dragging trouble to your doorstep. Sweetie, sitting nearby, suddenly chimed in. Dad, you like Aunt Jessica, don't you? I think Aunt Jessica is way better than those flashy women outside. Helen laughed, lightly tapping Sweetie on the head. Don't be cheeky, he said. But he didn't deny it. Flustered, I quickly changed the subject. The idea of being with Helen? No way. He was too shrewd, too calculated. A relationship with him would be exhausting. After this incident, the Ryans kept quiet for a while. During the summer break, I accompanied Sweetie on a trip abroad. When we returned, shocking news greeted me. Donna had suffered a miscarriage. Ethan had dropped out of school and ended up in juvenile detention. And Ryan's business had collapsed under Donna's revenge. The entire family was now living off their dwindling savings, their household in complete chaos. Out of options, Donna eventually sought Helen's help to return to her job at the company. That's when I learned the full story. As Donna's pregnancy progressed, her attention shifted away from Ethan, favoring her own daughter. She often clashed with Ethan, especially over games and petty arguments. With no one to mediate, the house became a war zone. Mrs. Chun and Ryan's solution was to leave the chaos behind and escape for peace. Without supervision, Donna's bias toward her daughter escalated, further fueling Ethan's resentment. The breaking point came when financial stress hit the household. Donna refused Ethan's requests for takeout and in-game purchases. Furious, he decided to retaliate. While Donna was at a prenatal checkup, Ethan bullied her daughter, escalating to violence. When Donna returned and found out, she confronted Ethan, leading to a physical fight. Seething with hatred for the unborn child who had stolen his place in the family, Ethan deliberately kicked Donna in the stomach, causing her to miscarry. By the time Mrs. Chen and Ryan rushed back to clean up the mess, it was too late. Donna not only lost her baby, but also faced her daughter crying and demanding to leave the toxic household. She was furious, insisting on reporting Ethan to the police. With their youngest son gone, Ryan naturally took Ethan's side, threatening Donna with divorce if she dared to press charges. The once loving couple who had schemed relentlessly to be together had now torn each other apart, becoming bitter enemies. Donna, determined to make Ethan pay, succeeded in having him sent to juvenile detention. Gritting her teeth, she declared, "He ruined my daughter's life, so I'll make sure he carries a criminal record for the rest of his." Helen Grant, still considering Donna's previous contributions as a senior employee and sympathizing with her daughter's plight, offered her a regular staff position elsewhere. Yet Donna turned on me with a venomous glare. "It's all your fault, Jessica. If you'd taken Ethan with you back then, none of this would have happened. My daughter wouldn't have been hurt. You're a heartless mother. How dare you live so beautifully now when your son is a criminal? This is your doing." Her hysterical accusations startled me, but I remained composed. Donna had no right to blame me for this. The law would hold Ethan accountable for his actions. But as for her, I looked at her with disdain and said sharply, "Back then, you were so desperate to marry Ryan that you encouraged your daughter to cozy up to his family, especially Ethan. You put a teenage boy and girl under the same roof during such a vulnerable time in their lives. As a mother, did you ever think about protecting your daughter? I pity her." Donna staggered back, momentarily speechless. I took a step closer, my tone unwavering. "What? Did you think I should have let you manipulate me, clearing every obstacle for your perfect little life? Think again." Her face turned a deep shade of red, a mix of humiliation and fury, as though caught red-handed. Helen, who had been observing silently, finally sighed, disappointment flickering in his eyes. "Donna, all of this is your own doing. Even now, you still think it's someone else's fault. I have to say, your character leaves much to be desired." He was ready to withdraw his job offer on the spot, but I intervened. "Let it go," I said quietly. "Consider it atonement for my son's sins." I didn't pity Donna, no matter how miserable her situation was. But divorced, unemployed, and disgraced. I couldn't help but wonder, what would become of her daughter? Donna, ungrateful as ever, shot me a hateful glare before leaving in humiliation. Later, I sat in my room for a long time, deep in thought, until Helen knocked gently and entered. "Are you worried about your son?" he asked with genuine concern. I gave him a faint, absent-minded smile and shook my head. "No, not at all. In fact, I think this outcome is just fine." Helen raised an eyebrow, his curiosity evident, but I didn't care what he thought of me. Speaking plainly, I added, "If I had fought for custody back then, I'd probably be in a worse position than Donna today. At least she still has her life." Helen studied me for a moment before sitting down beside me. After a brief silence, he asked unexpectedly, "Jessica, what do you think of Sweetie's suggestion?" It took me only a second to grasp his meaning, and I responded playfully, "Mr. Grant, are you trying to avoid paying $6,000 a month for a house manager?" Helen chuckled, shaking his head in exasperation. Of course, a man as wealthy as him wouldn't care about such a sum. Based on what he'd shared about his reasons for divorcing his ex-wife, I suspected he was looking for a partner who prioritized family above all else. But that wasn't me. I had my own career, and working as his house manager was merely the first step in my professional plans. "Helen," I said with a knowing smile, "for two seasoned foxes like us, taking that step forward would be no small feat, don't you think?" He sighed softly, a hint of regret in his voice. "Yes, it would be quite difficult." I responded with a silent nod. Over time, I had noticed Helen Grant's growing fondness for me, his kindness, patience, and subtle attempts to test the waters of our relationship. But as he said, taking our relationship a step further would be incredibly challenging. Having just freed myself from a marriage that reduced me to little more than a housekeeper, I couldn't step back into another relationship under the same guise. If it didn't work out, I thought, I could always walk away, pay the hefty penalty for breaking my contract, and move on. With that mindset, I pulled myself together and, as a matter of duty and principle, went to the juvenile detention center to visit Ethan. He had lost a lot of weight, his youthful arrogance replaced by a defeated, hollow demeanor. His arms and face bore faint bruises, a testament to the harsh lessons he had been learning. When he saw me, he instinctively moved closer, his eyes glistening with a mix of tears and joy. But just as his hand reached out to touch me, he hesitated and pulled it back. Unsure of himself, I stood silently, observing him. Despite feeling a trace of pity, I found his current appearance far less repugnant than the entitled, greasy-faced boy he used to be. "Mom," he whispered softly, his voice tinged with anxiety and awkwardness, like a stray puppy desperate for attention yet afraid of rejection. "I was wrong. Please scold me," he muttered, bowing his head deeply, his hands twisting nervously. For a moment, a faint ripple stirred in my heart, but I pushed it aside and said coldly, "I won't scold you, nor will I care for you. You're not worth it." Tears immediately streamed down his face. "Mom, I truly know I was wrong. I've realized now that only you ever loved me. It was Grandma and Dad. They kept saying terrible things about you, poisoning me against you. I never wanted to reject you." "Mom," I scoffed, laughing quietly. He looked at me, confused by my reaction. "Ethan, oh Ethan," I said with a bitter smile. "You really are the kind of person who pledges loyalty to whoever provides for you. Your dad may be a scumbag, but he at least stood up to Donna for your sake. And yet here you are, shifting blame the moment it's convenient." I shook my head in disappointment. I had to admit that my son was inherently ungrateful, a trait ingrained in his very nature. "Focus on your rehabilitation," I said flatly, turning and walking away without looking back. This ending felt like closure, a way to finally lay to rest the bitterness and regret that had consumed me in my previous life. The chains that had bound me for so long had been broken. The Jessica of today no longer feared the future. At 5 months pregnant, Daniel's first love, Ava, came to our home to provoke me and set it on fire. I didn't contact my husband, Daniel. Instead, I covered my nose and mouth with a damp cloth and silently waited for rescue. In my previous life, during the first moments of the fire, I had called him, begging him to take me to the hospital for emergency care. In the end, the baby was saved. But Ava, one of his colleagues, died in the fire that day. Ava told me with his dying breath that he didn't blame me and urged me to rest well and focus on my pregnancy. He even took time off work to care for me. But on the day I gave birth, Daniel took a knife and slit my child's throat before my very eyes. Then he burned me and my baby alive. In my final moments, through the blazing flames, I saw his twisted, menacing expression. If it weren't for you deliberately starting the fire, Ava wouldn't have died. Do you think pretending to be a victim will fool me? Dream on. You'll pay for her life with yours. You like setting fires, don't you? Let me show you what it feels like. When I opened my eyes again, I was back at the scene of the fire. Thick smoke filled my nose, choking me into a violent cough. The pain jolted me out of the memories of my past life. This time, I didn't call my husband Daniel, who was a rescue team leader. Instead, I dialed the public emergency line. When the rescue team arrived, I saw Daniel's familiar figure from a distance. Only after he carried Ava out of the fire did I finally let myself cry out for help. The team thought I was making trouble. They scolded me with cold expressions until a decoration on the wall collapsed, striking my abdomen. Blood spurted from my mouth as I fell. But they ignored me. I gritted my teeth against the pain and used all my strength to crawl out of the fire. Yet, when the rescue equipment arrived, it was used solely on Ava. Daniel didn't even glance at me, only chastising me for bringing this upon myself. The intense pain caused cold sweat to pour down my body, and I could feel the baby's life slipping away. In my previous life, both Ava and I had called Daniel simultaneously during the fire. Daniel chose to save me first for the sake of the baby, but by the time he returned to rescue Ava, the fire was out of control, leaving no way in. Ava perished in the flames, leaving nothing behind. Daniel had said it was fine and even comforted me, urging me not to blame myself. He took time off work to support me during my pregnancy, but the day I gave birth, he took me and the baby to Ava's grave. There, he slit the baby's throat and drenched himself in its blood. His eyes were filled with madness. Do you know what it's like to be burned alive? I'll make you pay 100-fold for the pain Ava endured. True to his word, he burned me and the baby alive. This time, Reborn, I only wanted to escape him. But even now, he wouldn't spare me. Not even emergency cooling equipment was allocated for me. Blood poured from my body as I let out a final hoarse scream for help. Save my baby, please. Finally, one of the rescue team members noticed me and turned around. But his eyes were full of disdain and mockery. He nudged me with his foot. Cut the act. Everyone in the team knows you despised Ava. I can't believe you'd go this far. Setting a fire while pregnant. The boss has already gone to save someone else. Nobody's buying your performance. Honestly, I almost admire your dedication. Too bad the boss only has eyes for Ava. You'd better pray nothing happens to her. Otherwise, don't be surprised if the boss divorces you on the spot. I knew Daniel didn't love me, but I never expected even his teammates to treat me this way. The excruciating contractions silenced me, and my skin burned under the intense heat. Peeling away, no one in the team checked on me. They were all focused on putting out the fire. Amid the haze, I faintly heard someone cry out, "Oh no, why is there so much blood on the ground? Something's really wrong. Did she actually get hurt?" When someone finally turned toward me, their voice was filled with annoyance. What could really be wrong? She just wants the boss to look at her. She's been at it all day. Fine, you go call the boss over and see what happens. But I didn't get Daniel's concern. Instead, I got his icy anger. His gloved hand slapped me across the face. Twice. With unrestrained force. "Emily, wake up. What's this act for? I'm here. Has your brain been eaten by a dog? You set the fire yourself and ended up burning yourself this badly. How does it feel to shoot yourself in the foot?" Even now, he thought I was the one who started the fire. He thought I was jealous, putting on a show to get his attention. I wanted to explain, but my throat was so dry I couldn't speak. My stomach was racked with unbearable pain, and I could only reach out to grab his sleeve, silently begging for help. He hesitated for 2 seconds, then pressed hard against my abdomen. "You're quite the actress. If Ava hadn't told me you set the fire and ran off, I might have actually believed you." Leaving those words behind, He turned and walked away without a second thought. The next moment, I heard a team member exclaim, "Boss, your shoes. There's blood. Is she having a miscarriage?" Another replied dismissively, "Ignore it. Didn't he already say it's just to scare us? She's 5 months along. It's not that easy to lose a baby. If she's a bother, just let her act." The excruciating pain overwhelmed me, and my vision went black as I completely lost consciousness. In my dream, I seemed to return to the moment I first met Daniel. It was during a university seminar. He stood on stage, his expression cold as ice. His unmatched expertise and skill captured the hearts of many women, including mine. I fell for him at first sight and began asking around to learn everything about him. At the time, I was an intern lecturer at the university, someone he didn't even notice. To get his attention, I worked harder and harder. After I got a permanent position, I invited him to dinner under the guise of expressing gratitude. I noticed a subtle change in the way he looked at me and seized the opportunity to pursue him aggressively. Flowers, basketball tickets, cakes, coffee. If it could be a gift, I never hesitated. Finally, my efforts paid off. He accepted my confession. I thought this was the beginning of happiness, but it turned out to be the start of my nightmare. After we got together, he grew colder and more distant. Every date was interrupted by work emergencies or sudden rescue missions. I never doubted him, until the day of our wedding. An email from overseas shattered my dream entirely. The email was from Ava, detailing their 10 years together. Every memory, every second, was a knife to my heart. All the time he had stood me up, he'd been with her. The most pathetic part? I didn't even have the courage to confront him. I was terrified he'd leave me. In my previous life, when Ava died in the fire, Daniel's calmness made me think I was the winner in this love triangle. He emptied every baby store in the city to prepare for our child, showering me with sudden affection that made me dizzy with hope. But when he killed me and my baby after I gave birth, I finally understood. He didn't love me. He was using me as a tool for revenge against Ava's death. From start to finish, his heart only belonged to Ava. When I woke up, I was already in a hospital bed. The faces around me were unfamiliar. A man, probably in his 30s, spoke to me kindly. "You're awake. I'm your neighbor from downstairs. I just wanted to check on things. But when I got there, you were lying on the floor. I brought you to the hospital. How are you feeling?" I struggled to move my limbs and instinctively placed my hands on my abdomen, only to stop in shock. The man looked uncomfortable. "I'm sorry. The doctor said when you were brought in, your baby couldn't be saved." I forced a bitter smile and shook my head weakly. "It's not your fault. Thank you for bringing me here." Even a stranger could see something was wrong with me. Yet my husband of 5 years hadn't even looked in my direction. Seeing my despair, the man grew visibly upset. "I don't know what's wrong with those rescue guys. Someone lying there like that, and they don't help? If I hadn't gone to check on you, you'd be dead right now. Where's your family? Doesn't the baby's father care? Do you want me to call him for you? You shouldn't be alone right now. I've already reported that rescue team. People like them are a scourge on society," my neighbor said firmly. I nodded, trying to respond, but all I could manage was a faint whisper. "The baby's father is dead," I said weakly. Sympathy filled his expression. "Don't worry. I'll take care of you until you're discharged," he offered. I declined his kind gesture, transferred the hospital and surgery fees to him as thanks, and urged him to leave. Though he left, the storm of public outrage online was only growing. The story of the rescue team captain whose backyard caught fire had an inherent sensational appeal. By now, it had climbed to the top of trending topics on several major platforms. My neighbor, with good intentions, had uploaded a photo of me lying on the ground in the comments section. The image quickly sparked widespread discussion. Everyone was condemning the rescue team, questioning how they could focus solely on extinguishing fires while ignoring a pregnant woman and her unborn child. Some argued they shouldn't even be called a rescue team but merely a firefighting squad. I scrolled through the comments, finding some satisfaction in the backlash against Daniel. Yet, I still felt it wasn't enough of a punishment for him. Opening my chat app, I prepared to send him a message requesting a divorce. But a text from Ava popped up first. Turned out she was also in this hospital. staying just one floor below me. She had sent a photo of Daniel carefully feeding her porridge. In the image, he blew on each spoonful to cool it down, afraid it might burn her. Their intimacy was clear. I had seen enough of these pictures in the past to be numb to them. Without letting them affect me, I closed the chat app and dialed Daniel's number. It wasn't until the 5th call that he finally answered, his tone dripping with irritation. "What do you want now? Are you calling to ask if Ava is dead? Sorry to disappoint you. She's alive and well. Thanks to me. She's here in the hospital, recovering perfectly fine. Emily, I've known you for so long, but I never thought you'd stoop this low. Do you even know what you're doing? You're a murderer. Have you lost your mind? I'm giving you 1 hour. Come to her room and apologize to her. Or we're done. We'll divorce." Before I could respond, I heard Ava's feeble voice from his side. "Daniel, please don't blame her. It's all my fault. If she says I set the fire, just let her. Don't argue with her. Pregnant women shouldn't be upset." Daniel let out a long sigh. "You're too kind, Ava. That's why she walks all over you. We met first. Who does Emily think she is? She doesn't even have the right to lay a finger on you. This time, no matter what, I'll make sure she learns her lesson." As they continued their exchange, I cut in with a calm, steady voice. "All right, let's get divorced." "I agree. I'll send you the papers. Make sure you sign them." Daniel was stunned. Clearly, he hadn't expected me to take the initiative. He froze for a moment, then exploded with anger. Just as he was about to lash out, I ended the call abruptly. Before I could block his number, messages began flooding in. "Where are you? Emily, are you insane today? I let things slide before because you were pregnant, but now you've gone too far. Do you think I wouldn't dare divorce you because of the baby? Don't push your luck. You'll regret it if I have to sign those papers on the day you give birth. And take down those online posts right now. Don't make me expose your true colors publicly." I didn't bother reading the rest. I deleted all the messages and blocked his number. Even though I had already endured his betrayal in my previous life, the pain in my chest flared up again, as sharp as ever. While I was lost in thought, a group of nurses came in to change my bandages. They didn't notice my expression as they chatted among themselves. "Did you see the guy downstairs? He's so handsome," one of them said. It was the first time I'd heard such admiration for a couple. One of the nurses sighed dreamily. "I've never seen a couple so well matched. I heard they were childhood sweethearts. A classic campus romance. So enviable." Another chimed in. "You're so out of the loop. Here's the latest. Mr. Carter went all out to secure a private station in the cafeteria, just so he could make fresh porridge for his beloved wife every day. He even forbade anyone else from touching her food. When I went to apply his bandages earlier, he wouldn't let me do it. He insisted on handling it himself. Talk about couple goals." Their chatter washed over me as I stared numbly at the needle marks on the back of my hand. The skin on my arm, already peeling from the burns, throbbed with a mix of pain and itching. When they finally left the room, I exhaled deeply, gasping for air as if I'd been suffocating. Yet no matter how much I tried to breathe, my chest remained tight and hollow. That evening, the doctor came by to check on me. He informed me, with a detached tone, that the severe trauma to my abdomen meant I was unlikely to have children in the future. My first reaction to his words was a twisted sense of relief. At least there won't be another child to suffer because of me. A child deserves a better start in life, not this endless misery. Once the room was empty again, I picked up my phone and checked the latest news online. The situation had spiraled out of control. The public backlash forced the rescue department's leadership to step forward with an explanation. But their statement turned everything on me, claiming the fire had been orchestrated by me as an act of jealousy and malice. They accused me of intentionally wasting rescue resources and tarnishing the reputation of their exemplary team captain. To make their claims more convincing, Daniel publicly registered an account and uploaded our marriage certificate. His actions completely turned the tide of public opinion against me. The outrage that had initially targeted the rescue team shifted entirely to me. My social media was flooded with hateful comments, eventually leading to my account being banned. Any attempts to explain were drowned out by the flood of vitriol. In the days that followed, I noticed the hostile stares of the medical staff. Professionalism kept them from outright throwing me out, but the contempt in their eyes was unmistakable. Every day, I received threatening deliveries from unknown senders, packages filled with malicious messages and intimidation. I didn't respond or defend myself. When the doctor finally said I could be discharged, I sent Daniel a brief message. Let's finalize the divorce tomorrow at the civil registry. It didn't take long for him to call back, his voice dripping with mockery. So, you finally ran out of tricks and showed your face? I warned you. I gave you a chance to take down the online backlash. But you refused. Don't blame me for being ruthless now. If it weren't for Ava pleading for you, I'd have had you arrested already. Fine. Let's divorce. But don't come crying to me when your child ends up fatherless. If he grows up a bastard, that's on you. Before I could respond, he hung up. I quietly opened my home surveillance app, located the footage of Ava setting the fire, and saved it to my device. The next morning, after being discharged, I took my documents and headed straight to the civil registry office. But when the scheduled time came, it wasn't Daniel who appeared. It was Ava. She approached me with a smug smile, her voice dripping with mock concern. I told you, you'll never win against me. Your husband, he's nothing more than my obedient little lapdog. Oh, and look at you now, she said, glancing at my abdomen with mock surprise. The bastard child is gone? What a shame. First, his own father killed him in your last life. Now, this time, his father caused his death again. And with a mother like you, poor thing didn't stand a chance. Her words hit me like a thunderclap. She knew about my past life. She had been reborn too. Before I could process the revelation, my hand moved on its own, slapping her across the face. The blow wasn't strong. My body was still weak from the miscarriage, but it was enough to send her sprawling to the ground. Ava! Daniel's voice rang out behind me. He rushed forward and shoved me aside with such force that I nearly fell. I tumbled down the steps, only stopping when my face was bloodied from the fall. Daniel immediately rushed to Ava, cradling her in his arms. Then, as if a thought had just struck him, he abruptly turned his gaze to my stomach. His eyes landed on my now flat abdomen, and his face turned ashen. The baby. Where's the baby? He stammered. I struggled to my feet, every movement stiff and awkward from my injuries, using my bag to shield my abdomen. I met his gaze with a look filled with mocking disdain. The baby? Do you really think a bastard orphan would ever get the concern of the heroic team captain? Praised by the entire internet? What a touching display of kindness. But don't bother. There's no need for your concern anymore. The baby's gone. It happened on the day of the fire. Oh, and congratulations. By the way, true love triumphs in the end. Just don't get too comfortable. You might not have long to enjoy your happy days together. Make the most of them. Next time you'll only be able to visit your wife in prison. Daniel's brow furrowed, his features contorting in rage. Emily, must you always speak in such a sharp, venomous way? I'm the captain of the rescue team. Saving lives is my duty. I didn't hold you accountable for setting that fire. And I saved Ava for you. And now you turn around and blame me? What right do you have to talk to me like this? You have no right. Now tell me the truth. What's going on with the baby? Did you wear something to hide your pregnancy? Let me remind you. I'm the child's biological father. That's a fact you can't change. Even if you tried to give birth in secret, I'd fight for custody. I couldn't believe my ears. After all these years of marriage, this was what he thought of me. The whole relationship felt like a joke. As he finished, he helped Ava to her feet and began to walk toward me, as if to check my abdomen himself. But Ava let out a pitiful sob, immediately diverting his attention back to her. Are you okay? Where are you hurt? Should I take you to the hospital for a checkup? You're still recovering. And we can't take this lightly, he said with concern. I'm fine, Ava murmured softly. Don't be angry with my sister. It's my fault. I shouldn't have gone to her house that day and upset her. If I'd known she didn't like me, I would have stayed away. It's all my fault. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she spoke, and Daniel's eyes reddened with pain for her. Their blatant display of intimacy made my stomach churn. Unable to hold back, I finally said, Are you two done? So, go inside and get the paperwork done. I'll step aside to make things official for you. So your relationship won't be seen as illegitimate anymore. My words hit a nerve. Daniel's face twisted in anger. Emily, is your heart made of stone? Can't you see how injured Ava is because of you? I'm ordering you right now. Apologize to her. I laughed coldly, glancing at Ava's triumphant expression behind him. Are you blind? Daniel, you pushed me down the stairs. Where's my apology? And how dare you call yourself the baby's father? Was it your blatant neglect at the fire scene that made you a father? Or was it the way you spent all 5 months of my pregnancy entangled with another woman? His rage boiled over, his voice rising sharply. You set that fire yourself, pregnant and all, trying to kill Ava. I thought this week apart would calm you down. But clearly, it hasn't. You're nothing but a selfish, cruel woman unfit to be a mother. When the baby is born, I will take full custody. If you behave yourself and treat Ava with respect, I might let you see him occasionally. Otherwise, don't even think about it. His shouting drew the attention of passers-by. Some stopped to watch, and I could see recognition in their faces. People were whispering, realizing he was the exemplary team captain making headlines recently. Ava, not missing the opportunity, pointed directly at me and said loudly, "Sister, I know you hate me, but you should at least think about the child you're carrying." Ava said, her voice soft and pleading. "You tried to burn me alive while pregnant, but I'm willing to forgive you. Just please, don't be angry anymore. Okay." As soon as her words fell, a barrage of insults came from the crowd around us. Isn't this that evil woman from the internet? The one who plays the victim while being a monster? Being cursed out for a week wasn't enough for her. Huh. People like her treat lives like a joke. That poor kid. Imagine being stuck with a mother like her, not even born yet, and already carrying the burden of a murder. Why hasn't a car just run her over already? Daniel didn't even attempt to defend me. He remained aloof, towering above me like he was untouchable. I looked at him coldly and spoke, my voice sharp. "You want me to apologize to Ava? Sure. But only if she kneels at my child's grave and apologizes first." Daniel's face twisted in frustration. "Unreasonable. Hopeless. I must have been blind to marry you. Let's just get the divorce over with." Hearing this, Ava's eyes sparkled with triumph. I didn't respond. Instead, I lowered my head and dusted off my clothes, letting out a soft chuckle. "Go ahead and laugh. Ava, the harder you laugh now, the harder you'll cry when you're in prison." When it was time to finalize the divorce paperwork, even the staff at the civil registry recognized us. They looked at Daniel with sympathy, as if divorcing me was his ultimate liberation. It felt like I was the villain holding him back from happiness. Cameras flashed wildly, capturing me from every angle as people rushed to post the photos online. The insults rained down like a flood, leaving my reputation in shreds. Walking out of the registry office, Daniel didn't spare me a single glance. He wrapped his arm protectively around Ava, and the two of them walked straight to the car. They didn't even bother asking about the child. Fine by me. It saved me the trouble of explaining. With my home burned to the ground, I rented a small apartment nearby. After signing the lease, I went straight to the police station. On the way, Ava sent me a gloating message. I opened the photo attached and saw Daniel at a real estate office, helping Ava choose a new home. "Last time, you couldn't beat me. This time, you're still the loser. Just accept it. Your bastard child was never meant to survive." I saved her message along with all the previous ones and submitted them to the police along with the surveillance footage showing Ava setting the fire. First, the officers were cold, recognizing me as the so-called arsonist from the internet rumors. But after watching the video, their expressions softened with sympathy. "You had this evidence all along. Why didn't you come forward sooner?" one officer asked. I shook my head. The timing wasn't right. If I'd released this earlier, I wouldn't have been able to divorce Daniel, only by letting him rise as high as he could, then watching him crash. Can I truly get my revenge? The officer nodded silently and told me to wait for the investigation results. They promised to handle it quickly. After years as a stay-at-home wife with no income, my top priority post-divorce was finding a job. Without work, I wouldn't even have the money to take Ava to court. I downloaded a job search app and sent my resume to local companies. However, The impact of the online backlash exceeded my expectations. Not a single company was willing to grant me an interview. Their rejections were vague and dismissive, claiming I lacked work experience. But I could see from the app that most of them hadn't even opened my emails. They likely dismissed my applications outright after seeing my name. Refusing to give up, I called HR departments directly. First, some were willing to speak with me, but as the days passed, even my phone number was blacklisted in the industry. I wasn't surprised. Given the current storm of public opinion, any company hiring me would instantly face backlash. I looked at my diploma from a top-tier university, bitterness welling up inside me. I never imagined that one day I would find myself unable to secure a job. And all of this, every setback, stemmed from trusting the wrong person in my youth. Giving up on office jobs, I turned my attention to entry-level service positions. Wandering through a large shopping mall, I applied to every store that had a now hiring sign. Eventually, a jewelry store decided to take me in. During this time, the photos taken at the civil registry office had gone viral online. Everyone now knew me as the arsonist abandoned by her husband, and the public celebrated my downfall with applause. Meanwhile, candid photos of Daniel and Ava on a date began circulating, accompanied by comments filled with blessings for the happy couple. Some users claimed to have spoken to Daniel, who reportedly said that their big day was coming soon. Shortly after, the city's largest hotel posted an official announcement confirming that Daniel's wedding banquet had been booked at their venue. Scrolling through the endless waves of congratulations online, I couldn't help but smile. This was the same Daniel who had once told me Ava was just like a sister to him, and that their relationship was pure. Yet now, barely divorced, he couldn't wait to host a grand wedding. Whatever love I had once felt for him had long since turned to hatred. The news of their wedding no longer stung me. It only gave me an idea. I thought to myself, wouldn't it be quite the spectacle if the bride and groom were both arrested by the police on their wedding day? The next day, while working at the jewelry store, Daniel and Ava walked in. Ava's expression betrayed no surprise. She had clearly chosen this store intentionally after finding out I worked there. "Look, darling, doesn't this look beautiful on me?" Ava asked sweetly, trying on a necklace. "You'd look good in anything, my love," Daniel replied, his tone indulgent. "Do you like it? If you like it, I'll buy it. What's the point of making money if not to spend it on you?" I wore a mask to cover the scars on my face, but Daniel recognized me immediately. I tried to turn and leave, but Ava called out, "Excuse me, miss, could you help me with this ring?" Glancing around, I saw that my colleagues were all busy with other customers. I was the only one free. Cursing under my breath, I turned back, retrieved the ring from the display, and placed it on the counter in front of her. Daniel's gaze landed on my flat abdomen, and his brows furrowed deeply. "Emily," he said sharply, "are you still wearing a waist binder? Don't you know how harmful that is to the baby?" I didn't even look at him as I placed the ring on the table. "Sir, I don't know you. If you keep harassing me, I'll call the police." His hand shot out, grabbing my wrist. He tried to lift my shirt to check, but I twisted away from his grasp. He snapped, his voice rising. "Do you even know what you're doing? You're 5 months pregnant. Who told you it was okay to work in this condition?" "You're crazy," I retorted coldly. "Who told you I was pregnant? Are you buying or not? If not, get out." Ignoring my words, Daniel grabbed my collar in front of everyone and shouted, "Emily, even if we're divorced, I'm still the father of the child you're carrying. I have the right to be involved." The commotion drew the attention of the entire store. All eyes were on us. But Daniel didn't care. He yanked up my shirt, revealing my abdomen. It was flat. No waist binder. No sign of pregnancy. His face turned a shade of deep red, anger and disbelief battling for dominance. "Where's the baby?" he roared, his voice trembling with rage. "I'm asking you one last time. Where is the baby?" Even Ava's attempts to calm him went unheard. He was completely out of control. I pried his hand off my arm and said coolly, "I told you already. The baby is gone. It died in the fire that day, while you were rushing Ava to the hospital. Your child was dying." For a moment, Daniel froze as if struck by lightning. His face went pale, and his body stiffened. He stood there, rooted to the spot, his expression shifting between shock and disbelief. Finally, he muttered, "That's impossible. How could the baby be dead? You were perfectly fine that day. You started the fire yourself. How could you possibly have burned your own child?" Daniel's voice cracked with disbelief. "You're joking with me, right? Tell me you're joking. Say something." Ava, hiding the smug satisfaction in her eyes, gently clung to his arm and turned to me with a concerned expression. "Sister, I don't mean to criticize, but the baby wasn't just yours. How could you secretly get rid of it? That's so cruel. I already said I don't blame you for the fire. Why couldn't you let the baby live? Even if you were angry, you shouldn't have taken it out on an innocent life. That baby was a living, breathing soul, not a tool for your tantrums." Her words reignited Daniel's fury. The next moment, his hand shot out, gripping my neck. My breath hitched as he squeezed tighter, my face turning red from the lack of air. Still, his focus remained solely on his accusations. "You got rid of the baby behind my back." I clawed at his hands, struggling with all my might, but I couldn't break free. It wasn't until my coworkers noticed the commotion and rushed over to pull him off me that I was able to collapse, clutching my throat and coughing violently. Amid the searing pain, all I could feel was a twisted sense of satisfaction. "You think I got rid of the baby?" I rasped through my labored breaths. "Remember this. Daniel, you were the one who killed your own child at the fire. Believe in Ava if you want. Go ahead. But the baby is watching from above, watching the father who abandoned him marry another woman." Daniel froze, stunned into silence by my words. His grip on reality seemed to falter as he processed what I had said. Ava, ever the actress, stepped forward with a look of feigned concern. She muttered soft, comforting words toward me, but every sentence was calculated to cement my guilt further in everyone's eyes. Leaning in close, she whispered in a voice only I could hear, "Everything you've lost today. You deserved it. That bastard never should have been born." Fury bubbled up in me. Without thinking, I slapped her hard across the face, my nails leaving a trail of scratches that began to bleed. Ava immediately adopted an expression of deep hurt, tears welling up in her eyes as she looked at Daniel for sympathy. Daniel snapped out of his daze, his face twisted with rage. He stormed toward me, grabbing a handful of my hair and slamming my head against the glass countertop. "You lunatic," he roared. "How dare you kill my child? What right did you have? I'll make you pay for this. You'll pay with your life." The glass cracked under the impact, shards embedding themselves into my forehead. Blood trickled down my face, but I barely felt the pain. My mind was detached, eerily calm. Humans are strange creatures. In my last life, Daniel killed our child for Ava. Now, he's trying to kill me for revenge over that same child. It seems that what you can't have always becomes the most cherished. The store employees finally called security, ending the chaos. With Ava's persuasion, Daniel reluctantly calmed down. Though his hateful glare never left me, they left together. But the damage was done. I lost my job. The manager blamed me for poor customer service and for causing a public scene that harmed the store's reputation. Too tired to argue, I simply left and hailed a cab to the hospital. On the way, I contacted the police and confirmed the timing of the arrests. Daniel and Ava's wedding day. While the doctor cleaned my wounds, he glanced at my medical history and sighed deeply. "You're so young. You need to take better care of yourself. This rate, your body won't hold up for long." I offered a bitter smile. Once the people who deserve punishment are behind bars, I'll take care of myself. As I paid the medical fees, a series of messages flooded my phone. They were from Daniel, using Ava's number. He demanded to know why I got rid of the baby, and repeatedly accused me of acting on my own without his consent. I didn't bother to respond. He still believed that I had secretly aborted the baby, while the woman he loved remained an innocent victim in his eyes. I didn't reply to his messages. Instead, I left the hospital, took a cab back to the mall, and requested the security footage of Daniel attacking me in the store. I submitted it along with the fire evidence to the police. For the next 3 days, I stayed in my rented apartment, nursing my wounds and keeping tabs on the online updates. Daniel and Ava's every move was documented, whether shopping for jewelry or trying on wedding attire. Their love story was trending everywhere. Daniel hadn't sent me another message since that day, nor had he asked about me. In his mind, I was nothing more than a cruel murderer who had taken his child, far removed from anything resembling love. Ava, however, continued to post updates daily, each one showcasing their blissful moments together. The day of their wedding arrived. The entire rescue team was present, lined up in 2 neat rows outside the hotel entrance. Unsurprisingly, I hadn't been invited. When I appeared, they immediately stopped me at the door, their expressions dripping with disdain. "You don't seem to be on the guest list today, Miss Emily," one of them said, mockingly correcting himself. "Actually, I mean Ms. Yates. You shouldn't cause trouble. If the boss finds out we let you, the so-called arsonist, in, we can kiss our bonuses goodbye." I kept my composure and replied calmly, "I'm only here to watch. I won't say a word." They refused to let me through. As more guests arrived, including relatives who had attended my wedding to Daniel, their glares turned colder. Some muttered to the hotel security to have me thrown out. A drink bottle was hurled at me, splashing sticky liquid onto my clothes. Someone spat in my direction, shouting, "You're heartless." Another sneered, "You're a venomous snake." The ceremony was about to begin, and no one had time to deal with me anymore. Taking advantage of the distraction, I followed closely behind a janitor, sneaking into the venue after changing into a cleaner's uniform. When the ceremony reached its final stage, where the bride and groom exchanged rings, I lowered my head and typed a message on my phone. "You can make the arrests now." The very next second, the grand doors of the banquet hall burst open. Police officers flooded in, surrounding the bride and groom. Daniel's face twisted in confusion and anger, while a flicker of panic crossed Ava's eyes before she forced herself to stay composed. As the guests exchanged bewildered glances, I walked up to the stage at a measured pace and spoke into the microphone. "Apologies for interrupting. Ms. Ava Parker is under investigation for arson and attempted murder. I've submitted all relevant evidence to the authorities. As for Mr. Daniel Carter, he is being charged with negligence at the fire scene, refusing to perform his duty, and assault. I've also filed a lawsuit against him. I'm afraid today's wedding won't proceed as planned. If Mr. Carter still intends to hold a wedding in the future, I suggest everyone visit him in prison." Daniel exploded in rage, shouting insults at me and attempting to charge forward, but the police restrained him. Ava, visibly shaken, tried to spin the narrative, throwing baseless accusations at me to deflect blame, but no one listened. At the station, Daniel was shown the footage of Ava setting the fire. His face turned grim, and he fell silent for a long time before finally speaking. "So in the past life, was it also you who started the fire?" It was then I realized Daniel had also been reborn. That explained his desperate efforts to broadcast his love for Ava this time around. He was trying to make up for the regrets of his previous life. Ava, running out of excuses, could only apologize to him tearfully, begging for his forgiveness. But Daniel's eyes were filled with disappointment, and he refused to look at her again. Instead, he turned to me, his tone softening as he began to apologize and plead for my forgiveness. I knew men like him all too well. He wasn't sorry for what he had done. He was only trying to gain my forgiveness to lessen his punishment. He didn't want to go to prison. I didn't forgive him. Instead, I firmly reminded the police of the importance of a thorough investigation and prosecution. After the officers led him away, I remained in the interrogation room, now alone with Daniel. The guilt of 2 lifetimes seemed to weigh on him, crushing the last of his rationality. He trembled violently, his entire body shaking as he knelt before me. "I'm sorry. I'm the one who killed our child. It's my fault. Every insult I threw at you, I take them all back. I know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness, but can I ask for one thing?" His voice cracked as he continued. "After all these years of knowing you, this is the only time I'll beg you. Please leave a space next to the baby's grave for me. I want to be buried beside our child." I looked at him, a faint sense of foreboding rising in my chest, but I didn't respond. Instead, I finished giving my statement and left the station. The police soon released the results of their investigation, and public opinion shifted instantly. Online accusations against me vanished as the truth came to light. However, it made little difference to Daniel and Ava. They were already in jail, unable to hear any of the backlash. Several members of the rescue team, who had ignored my injuries on the day of the fire based on Daniel's orders, were suspended from duty on the same day that the official report was released. Both Ava and Daniel were formally sentenced to prison. My phone was flooded with apology messages from various team members. I ignored all of them. Instead, I resumed submitting job applications. This time, the process went much smoother. Within 2 days, I landed a position at a company. The company's CEO was a middle-aged woman, a single mother herself. She had read about my story online and sympathized with my situation. She gave me opportunities to improve and encouraged me to grow. I threw myself into my work, ignoring everything happening outside my bubble. It wasn't until a week later that I stumbled upon news from 3 days prior. Daniel had committed suicide in prison. Ava, having been exposed for framing a pregnant woman, was ostracized by the other female inmates. Within a week, she had been hospitalized 3 times. According to someone claiming to be a medical staff member in the comments section, Ava was still in the ICU, teetering between life and death. I let out a quiet laugh and gave the news a like. Justice may come late, but it never fails to arrive.